When I was walking this morning to synagogue, the cars on Tustin Ranch Road were speeding by. And I smiled to myself and I said, they don't know that today is Yom Teruah. They don't know today's Rosh Hashanah. They're just moving along in their own path. But Hine matovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How wonderful it is for extended family to come together, to dwell together. High holy days can be spelled in a number of different ways. They can be spelled as H-I, High Holy Days, in which we get a chance to catch up and see familiar faces and wish each other a Shana Tova. I watch people as they come in and are greeted at the door with hugs. As we gather as family reunion, High Holy Days, a time to feel our place of belonging. Regardless of how frequently we come into this space, on this day, each of us has made a commitment to be here. It's not a simple thing. It may mean missing work, missing school, clearly being countercultural. To be here in this moment is to say, I am Jewish, it matters to me, and it feels worthy of my time and attention to say hi to the people that are my community, my extended family. But it's more than just greeting each other. It's also having an island of quiet time where our cell phones are put away, Twitter tweets are not being watched, where all the chaos and you can fill in the blank of the world around us is aside, to be in a safe space together to reflect. For these are also higher days, holy days. The word kadosh, holy, mirrored by yamim noraim, the days of awe, are a way of saying that on this day we are called by the sound of the shofar, lishaper, to improve, to reflect. How could I as a person be even more than I am? That's why religion and synagogue are powerful. Leaving God aside, and I'm going to return to God squarely on Yom Kippur Day, but leaving our respective thoughts about what it means to believe in God. Religion is so valuable and so powerful. Precisely because this is the space, this is the moment where we feel our sense of place in the world, a sense of belonging, and more, a sense of longing. This is the place in which we are called to ask, how could I be better? How could I grow? We all naturally want to be accepted just the way we are. Don't tell me what to do is a natural response from any of us feeling judged by anyone else. And yet, simultaneously, we all know that we have people we admire by their kindness, by their integrity, by their wisdom and how they listen. And we meet and know and have known in our lives those people who we bring with us into this moment. And we're called to reflect and to smile and to feel gratitude for having known them. And to say, I too wish I could listen a little bit better. I too wish that I helped those who I see on the streets. I too wish that I would be a little bit more open to listening to the person, even when I know they're wrong. Or at least I think they are. I should at least respect them to listen, with the hope they'll listen to me too. Not to change minds, but to honor that we live where there's more than political conversation, where there's more to who we are as people, as an extended family, to be honored for our genuine humanity and goodness. When we read Torah, we come together as a community to learn. For the Torah is the distilled consciousness of our ancestors. When I read Torah, take the creation story. I don't read it as history or as science. In fact, the creation story in particular is almost dreamlike. What it conveys in the first chapter of creation is a way of seeing the world, a way of saying that the world that we live in, despite tohu vavohu, despite chaos, is ordered. That the world that we live in, despite the awareness of what is wrong, is also good and worthy of looking at to find the good. God in the Torah is the most emotional personality in the entire book, 5 books. God is learning on the job how to get along with people, just like we're always on the job learning how to get along with people. We can take certain kind of hope that it's only natural, that life is ongoing. My great teacher, many of our great teacher, Elie Wiesel, has his birthday today. If he'd still be alive, Elie Wiesel would be 91 years today. And Elie Wiesel said, in our tradition, a student of Torah is called a Talmid Chacham, a student of wisdom. Anyone who thinks they're wise is not a Talmid Chacham. To be a Talmid Chacham is to see oneself always as a student, always with the humility that one is learning. And it's precisely this quality of humility that I want to focus in on in this moment. And to do so with a story about God, God as Lord and Tailor. It's one sentence, and let me give you some context. God places Adam and Eve in a garden. First Adam, then his helpmate. And they're told, you can eat from all the trees of the garden, except one. The one located toward the center. The tree whose fruit is the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. That one you can't eat. And you wonder, why the rule? Why does God have a rule for Adam and Eve? Apparently, even in that case, God, who's working on relationship, always, wants one test of faithfulness, one way of knowing that you will put me, God, first and foremost in terms of how you see yourselves and your responsibilities. But the temptation is too great. Forbidden fruit is sweet. We don't know what it tasted like, but we do know they tasted it. The snake, the serpent, said to Eve, you know, God doesn't want you to eat from it because then you'll be smart like God. We don't know, because that's part of the power of the Torah, what was going through her mind, but she reached out and she ate it, and then she gave it to Adam and he ate it, and then they were hiding. And we hear the first question in the Torah, Ayeka, where are you? Clearly, Ayeka means, where are you in your lives? Don't you know you have just failed me? But Adam says, we're naked. And God says, how do you know? Oh. It becomes apparent that they've eaten from the forbidden fruit. And they're wearing fig leaves. And God decides that this violation of trust, this break in the relationship, means that they're leaving paradise. But there's one sentence that reads as follows. Vayas Adonai Elohim, and God, the Creator, made La'adam u'Ishto, for Adam and his wife, kat not or, leather garments, v'yalbi shame, and he dressed them. Pause. Consider that as an image. Here's Adam and Eve. They got temporary clothing. They're just wearing fig leaves. God's getting ready to throw them out because they have betrayed God. Habakkuk, the great prophet, says, Berogez rachem tiskor. In one's anger, one must remember one's mercy. In this very moment, before God throws them out of the garden, God pauses to prepare them for the world outside. In what way? First, practically. Leather garments. He makes for them, that's explicit, katnot or, leather garments, something that will protect them in different kinds of weather, allow them to maintain their dignity, literally to cover their privates. They will go forth into the world with a sense of having been cared for physically. But even more powerfully, he teaches them the vital lesson of what it will take to not only survive, but to thrive. God, the Creator, that verse says, made the clothing for them and then dressed them. Didn't throw it down, say, take it and leave. You almost have this image of God as this caring parent reaching down and with the clothes that God has sewn, dresses them. And in doing so conveys humility and compassion. The ability of God to do it himself, herself, not to rely on somebody else in the courtyard of the Creator to take care of them. It is God who does the tending. No task, when the task is needed, is too low for God to tend to. And more, it's kindness. It's not only kindness with the clothing, it's the kindness of a final hug before they leave. Humility is connected to compassion. You can't have one without the other. The Baal Shem Tov, the great teacher of Chassidut, said, a person who is filled with himself leaves no room for God, and I will add, leaves no room for anyone else. What is humility? Humility is the opposite of pride. Humility is not meekness. Humility is the confidence of strength that one can open one's heart and make room and hear and respond to others. Humility is also the ability to say, I have fallen short. Chatanu. Salachna lanu. Forgive us. The ability to say, I did wrong, sadly, is not something everybody can say. For those who can't say, I am sorry, I did wrong, life is incomplete. Because that same person can't also say, I hear you. I care. Empathy is grounded in humility. Remarkably, only one adjective is used to describe Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, as the rabbis called Moshe. V'ha'ish Moshe, and the man, Moses. See, he was only human. Bible emphasizes. V'ha'ish Moshe, anav ma'od, was very humble. Mikol adam al pnei ha'adama, from any earthling on the face of the earth. The context for that statement about Moses, once again, we don't know what color hair Moses had. We don't know how tall he was. What we're told simply is that when he came down from Mount Sinai, he radiated light so that he needed a veil to cover himself. But the context for that statement about Moses' humility is a family altercation. Kind of. His brother and sister, Moses and Aaron, immediately before, are gossiping about his wife and his relationship with his wife. The rabbis are divided. You'd expect that. Because the Torah, and part of the power of the Torah, is that it's warshach. It brings us in with our imagination. It's not clear. Some say they were complaining that since Moses came down with that lit face, he no longer is intimate with his wife and he ignores her. Others say that they're saying Zipporah, that Midianite, how did he choose to marry her? It's not clear. But what is clear is that Miriam, in particular, is punished for what she is saying. God says to Miriam and Aaron, yes, I speak to you, but you're not your brother. There is nobody I speak to like Moshe, face to face, with a quality of immediacy. And she breaks out in leprosy, which in the Bible, mitzora, motzi, shem ra, is a penalty for somebody who has spoken ill of another. And so Aaron comes to his brother Moses and he says, our sister Miriam has this skin disease as if she's dying. Pray for her. And Moses doesn't wait. Immediately, the Torah records that Moses prayed to God 5 words. El na, rafa na la. Please, God, heal her. And she was healed. Imagine that. Here, his brother and sister are putting either him or his wife or both of them down. He has reason to say, I don't want to deal with them. If she's being punished by God, God has a good reason to punish her. But his humility is the ability to forgive, or at least to be compassionate, to step into the breach to see a need. And so Moses models humility for us. The rabbis again choose to call him Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher, not just for the words that Moses spoke, but for the way he acted. This ability to live with humility is only reinforced later. His brother Aaron will lose his 2 sons in a strange incident in the tabernacle. And Moses will criticize his brother Aaron for not eating the offering the next day. And Aaron would say, do you expect me to eat after what has happened? And then the text says, and Moses agreed that he was right. Moses could acknowledge that he, Moses, had no place in that moment to be criticizing his brother amidst loss. And when Moses says at a certain point, I can't take this job anymore. It's too much for me. God takes from Moses his light and places it on others. And so his assistant Joshua says, Moses, these other people, they're still preaching. And Moses says, I wish all of Israel would be prophets. When we read the Torah, we are challenged on this Rosh Hashanah day to examine humility. To what degree are we able to see that quality of humility in others? Elie Wiesel, in part because it's his birthday today, is very much on my mind. Many of us, because of the years he spent speaking at Chapman, had the opportunity, as well as dedicating this sanctuary. Do you know that Elie Wiesel came on a red eye and left on a red eye to dedicate this sanctuary? I had the great privilege to get to know him at the 92nd Street Y, where I worked during rabbinical school. And I wrote him a letter and I said, when I was a child, my synagogue was dedicated by Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I never, at that point, I was about 11 years old, had read Heschel. But later in my life, I would. And when I did, I could see him dedicating my synagogue. I could see his figure. I could hear his voice. Would you be that person to the children of our community? And he wrote and he said to his agent, Ruth Wheat, whatever he can afford will be fine. I'm going to go. And indeed, on that day that he was here, we invited all the religious schools of Orange County to come for a public conversation for children before the evening, in which we had an event that gave us a fund to have adult education. Elie Wiesel like many great people, never wore the opportunities that he had to speak to leaders of the world as an entitlement or even something he earned. He would say, I'm still the little boy from Siget. I still don't know why I'm being put forward to speak, but I need to speak on behalf of the survivors and those who perished and on behalf of the Jews. I don't choose this responsibility, but I must step forward. But when I step forward, I still see myself as that little boy. I saw Paul McCartney last week on Stephen Colbert's show. Stephen Colbert said to Paul McCartney, how do you deal with the fact that you're so famous? I grew up with your songs. I still remember moments. You're larger than life. How do you deal with the fact that you're larger than life? And Paul McCartney said, I grew up in Liverpool with a mother who died when I was 14. And I struggled with that. I had a brother 2 years younger than me. And I'm always that boy from Liverpool. Just like Elie Wiesel would say, I'm still that boy from Siget, thrust into other roles, but I always see myself from where I come. That's greatness. The definition of greatness is the ability to allow others to feel his or her own greatness. We are in a time in which humility is often a word that's misused, identified with meekness. Humility is strength, the ability to listen. One more story. This one from the Talmud. Hillel and Shammai in the first century were the two major teachers. Their students learned two different ways of interpreting Torah. They had 316 different disputes between the two schools of Hillel and Shammai. So the Talmud records. And for 2 years they debated who was right. And at the end, a voice from heaven said, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim Chayim. This and that are the words of the ever-living God. There is merit to what each argues, but the law is according to Hillel. And then the rabbi said, why? Why does Hillel win? And the explanation the rabbis gave is that Hillel, before they gave their opinion, always quoted the opinion of Shammai first, and then showed how they differed. And as a result, in some cases, Hillel changed their mind. With Shammai, there was no citing of Hillel and no changing of opinion. And so we learn that having a point and counterpoint is a valuable way to understand something that's difficult. To be in a sound chamber where you only listen to those who have your own opinion is natural. It's called confirmation bias. We do that naturally. We only give weight to that which proves what we already believe and disregard the rest. But the ability to listen is what our rabbis taught us throughout the Talmud. We have the opportunity to listen to each other. There are some topics, frankly, that are not always best discussed, where opinions won't change. We will be challenged even more in coming weeks and months to see the goodness in those we disagree with, to value others as created in the image of God, and to do so with respect, genuine respect, and to be aware of our own limitations. We are a community, and we may have many differences between what shows and TV channels we watch, which newspapers we read. But we are all an extended family, And we must always hold on to that awareness. And we must always hold on to the awareness that we don't have all the answers. No one of us has all the answers. The answers are always changing. To be a Talmid Chacham, to be wise, is to also always be a student. More than any sermon you will hear, my satisfaction will be what you share with each other. My work for this high holidays and preparing for these high holidays was largely putting this together. It's about 60 pages. It's been rewritten several times with many wonderful editors. To be a mensch, character making through 5 small group conversations. This is the 4th time that I have put forward an opportunity for congregants and others to have 5 conversations. You don't have to be a congregant. You don't have to be Jewish to invite somebody into your conversation. You just need one other person to be a group. Many cases, this is the 4th time, we've had congregants Skype with family at a distance to have the conversations. Sometimes they've invited their neighbors who were not Jewish to have the conversations. These 5 conversations are the following. What is a mensch? The desire to know more. Do justly. Love kindness. Walk humbly with your God. That is the mandate of the prophet Micah. What is it, O human, that God, the ever-present one, requires of you? Only do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with your God. What I ask of you to consider is to commit to being a host or a participant of a host. As you leave today, there will be a table, and hosts will be the ones to create a shorter line who can take these for your group to have a conversation. Most of the conversations focus in on who are your heroes of moral character. Who are the mensches who, through the acts that they have performed, continue to inform what it means to you to be a good person. In having those conversations, what you will most remember is not what others say to you, if you're like me. You will remember what you said. And what you say will often surprise you, coming from a deep place within you. And so, more than this sermon or other sermons, please consider having conversations with each other. Because on this day of Rosh Hashanah, we are called by the shofar l'shaper, to become more fully who we could be. Ribono Shalom, Master of the universe, we are not God, we are not Moses, but we know people sitting in this room who we would not embarrass by mentioning by name, who would even, with embarrassment, if pointed out, say, you're not talking about what I did. We know people in this room who have been there for us in different ways, who have been there for others, through kindness, through compassion, through humility. In remembering those people and those acts, we become more, for they evoke what is within us, our own desire to rise to be more fully ourselves, who we could be, created in the image of God. Ribono Shel Olam, you, the source of creation and healing, allow us to be most fully in your image. Amen.